They told me the venue was full, that there was no space for me at the family reunion, not even a chair. But as they walked into the ballroom, dressed to impress, the hotel manager stepped forward and said, "Welcome, Ms. Rowe. The team is ready for your arrival." "Hi, I'm Alyssa. Years ago, they said I wasn't built for their world. Too quiet, too soft, too broke. So I disappeared until the day they unknowingly stepped into a hotel I own. What happened next? Let's just say, silence speaks volumes when the contracts have my name at the bottom. Before we dive into the story, let me learn a bit about you. If you're a charming lady, please leave the number 1 in the comments. And if you're a dashing gentleman, leave the number 2. This way, I can send you a special greeting. Now, let's start the story together. It was the kind of envelope that made promises it had no intention of keeping. Thick paper, pale blue, silver lettering curled along the edges like it had somewhere important to be. It sat on my desk between a mug of cold coffee and a spreadsheet waiting on approval. I didn't reach for it. I didn't need to. I already knew what it was. Outside, the rain slipped down the glass of my corner office in slow streaks, blending the Seattle skyline into a blur of lights and shadows. Jazz hummed low through the ceiling speaker, a track from an old Coltrane album. It was the sort of day that made quiet feel earned. Kayla peeked in without knocking, holding a stack of client folders and the envelope. "You got some real mail, the kind with stamps and effort." She grinned, dropping it on top of my pending contracts. "I think it's fancy." I offered her a faint smile. "Thanks, Kayla. Can you review the Valin booking one more time? There was a glitch in the add-on fees." "Already on it," she chirped, vanishing back into her office with her usual energy. The envelope waited. I didn't open it. I didn't have to. Across the return address in scripted silver ink, it read, Carrington Rowe Family Reunion. Underneath, July 15th, 6 p.m. Elan Cascade Hotel, Denver. That name stirred something deep in my chest. Not panic, just recognition. Moments later, my phone lit up. Sophie Carrington, cousin, family liaison, social queen. Her text read, "Hey love, venue's super tight this year. So many RSVP'd last minute. Hope you don't mind sitting this one out." I stared at the message for a beat. The emoji at the end, her digital version of a soft kick to the shin, did more damage than any curse ever could. Not angry, not cruel, just erasure, sanitized and subtle. I unlocked my laptop and clicked into the executive booking queue. There it was. Carrington Group request, expedited tier, a short notice black tie event, ballroom, catering, guest suites, custom florals. Submitted through our premium concierge portal. Approved this morning. By me. I didn't flinch. I added a 25% surcharge for short notice luxury coordination, then clicked Confirmed. Next to the booking summary, my digital signature auto-filled A. Rowe, CEO, Elan Holdings. Under my desk, I nudged a small frame with my foot. Hidden near the back behind the cable nest and extra phone chargers sat a cracked plastic badge. Rowe, Housekeeping, 2011. I used to wear it clipped to my apron pocket back when the title matched the work and the silence came with a mop. Funny how people like Sophie still thought I lived somewhere upstate, probably waiting tables or managing a roadside inn. She'd never followed my LinkedIn. Maybe she didn't think I had one. I closed the screen, slid the envelope into a drawer without reading a word. They hadn't invited me, but they'd still be standing in my lobby. People think being erased feels like a slam or a scream, but in my case, it felt more like silence. A name left off an email, a photo posted with me cropped out, a chair at the table never set for one more. I was 22 the year I finally pushed back. Caldwell Rowe Financial had a corner office waiting for me, already labeled with my name. The expectation wasn't spoken, it was printed. A. Rowe, Strategic Development. I lasted 6 months. I asked the wrong questions, not about market share or quarterly trends. I asked why the janitorial staff had been quietly outsourced, Why a group of loyal employees had lost their pensions overnight. Why the building still bore my grandfather's name, but none of his values. My father didn't yell. He didn't have to. He shut his laptop, folded his glasses, and told me I had no vision. I told him he'd forgotten what it meant to carry weight that wasn't his. I left that same night. No packed boxes, no family dinner send-off. Just a duffel bag, a notebook with frayed corners, and $950 I'd saved from tutoring during undergrad. Vermont wasn't the plan. It was a map dot. A quiet pause between cities, somewhere I could rest and rethink. But it turned into something else. The Motor Lodge sat on the edge of Rainier Avenue, peeling paint, squeaky floors, and a front desk bell that stuck. Irene and Cal ran the place like it was an old story they didn't mind repeating. They didn't ask about my last name. They asked if I could fold a fitted sheet and handle late check-ins. My room was upstairs, number 7. Slanted ceiling, twin bed, one small skylight that leaked during storms. But it was mine. I cleaned 10 rooms a day, rotated towels stiff from bleach, and left each night with the scent of cedar stuck to my wrists. That winter, I started keeping notes, little details that guests noticed, the humming ice machine, the bedside lamp that buzzed. I fixed them with a twist of care, not budget. One guest, an older woman with a cane, left a note on her checkout card. "You're safe here." When Irene and Cal decided to retire, I came with spreadsheets, forecasts, and a modest offer. They handed me the keys with more trust than paperwork. I filed the deed under Elon Holdings, LLC. My name never showed up. I scrubbed every inch of the property, swapped out polyester drapes for soft linens in cream and moss green. I wrote welcome cards by hand. "You're here now. You can rest." Guests started returning. Then they started referring. Elon House opened fully booked on its first weekend. No ribbon cutting, no press, just full rooms and folded towels. I sat on the back porch that night, a mug of tea in hand, watching the porch light flicker slightly. Sophie once joked I seemed more comfortable by the kitchen. She said it at her wedding while I cleared dishes with the staff. Maybe she was right. But what she didn't know was that comfort doesn't always mean weakness. Sometimes it just means you've built something with your own hands. They said I left the family, but they never once asked where I went. Sophie had posted on Facebook 2 days earlier, all caps and exclamation points. "Pulled major strings to lock down the Cascade. This place is elite. Danver Legacy vibes only." I almost replied. Almost. But some surprises are better served in person. Elan Cascade stood tall in downtown Denver, understated from the outside, but inside, it was all hushed elegance. Textured walls in cool grays, floral arrangements with deliberate asymmetry, signature candle scent, fig and cedar. No marble fountains, no showboating, just quiet money wrapped in soft lighting. I arrived 2 days before the event, walking in through the back. I always entered through service corridors. It kept me grounded. The air smelled of polish and citrus. The floor buzzed with carts, clipboards, and the unspoken rhythm that good hotels carry in their bones. Marcus Wynn, our front office lead, was reviewing suite assignments. "Just finished prepping the Carrington group," he said, eyes still on his tablet. "You good with the changes?" "Send it," I said, and watched as Sophie's upgraded suite was quietly reassigned. A late-arriving diplomat, very pregnant, had been waitlisted until we freed up a corner view. Sophie's room now faced the alley, still pristine, but nothing to brag about. Back in my office, I updated our lighting cues. Subtle dimming at 7:15, slight warm shift in tone. It would soften the ballroom just enough to hush conversation, but not enough to feel staged. I replaced the standard welcome cards with a handwritten insert, not signed, just a line. "We hope your stay reminds you where you come from and what was never truly lost." The flowers arrived next, hydrangeas in white and pale blue, just as Sophie had requested. I made no changes there. Let her have that one. At 4:52 p.m., I sent one message to Aunt Lorraine. "Arrive at 6:40. Don't come early. It matters." She didn't reply, but it showed as read. That was enough. Kayla, still back in Seattle, texted me a few hours later. "That Carrington party? They sound so intense, LOL." I didn't reply. She didn't need to know. Some stories read better when the last chapter is already written. I walked the halls in navy slacks and a linen blouse, clipboard in hand. Staff nodded, a few offered updates. Ice machine fixed, gluten-free desserts labeled. The scent of roasted rosemary chicken drifted from the kitchen. For dessert, lemon tarts and tiny pots de crème lined the last tray. By 6:30, the ballroom was ready, staff stationed, music cued, champagne flutes aligned with ruthless symmetry, everything perfectly in place. I checked the final detail: projection screen system, smooth launch, crisp font, no lag, a quiet story waiting to be told. At 6:45, I stepped into the corridor behind the ballroom. My shoes made no sound on the polished tile. From here, I could hear the rising clink of glass, the laughter that always bordered on performative. I stayed in the shadow, fingers grazing the edge of the velvet curtain. Let them toast. I'd be watching the room they thought they earned. 3 soft chimes rang through the ballroom. Not loud, but just enough. Enough to cut through the low hum of conversation and the clink of glass on glass. The kind of sound you didn't argue with. I stood in the corridor behind the stage, fingers resting on the curtain edge. I didn't need to step out just yet. The room already knew I was there. They just didn't know they knew. Earlier that week, Sophie had told Marcus, "The owner won't be attending. Apparently, they're super private." She said it like a punchline, head tilted like she had an inside scoop. Marcus had nodded politely. I had smiled later when he told me. Now she stood near the champagne tower, swathed in navy silk, offering her most polished grin to a circle of aunts and second cousins. Her voice carried just slightly over the quartet playing a string rendition of a Coldplay song. She was mid-sentence when Marcus approached her. "Ms. Carrington," he said gently, clipboard in hand. "The owner would like to begin the welcome now." She blinked. "Oh, I don't think that's necessary. We've already welcomed everyone." Marcus didn't flinch. "They've requested we proceed." The lights dimmed before she could argue. A subtle shift, enough to hush the room, but not so much as to feel theatrical. The projection screen lit up on the far wall. Clean serif font, soft navy background. Words appeared slowly. No music, just presence. Elon Cascade, founded by Alyssa Rowe. Chief Executive Officer, Elon Holdings. For a full second, no one moved. Then I stepped forward. I emerged from the back balcony above the main floor, heels clicking once against the marble landing, hair pinned clean, navy dress, simple. Nothing screamed for attention. I didn't need it to. The room did that for me. Below, a glass slipped from someone's fingers. A soft shatter followed. Sophie's hand hovered mid-air. My father was near the back wall, arms crossed, eyes narrowed but unreadable. "Good evening," I began. My voice didn't waver. "I know most of you didn't expect to see me tonight." There was a flicker of nervous laughter. One table tried to ease the tension. I didn't give them the space. "I wasn't invited after all," I said, a pause. "But I thought someone should welcome you properly. To my home." I let that settle. Let it wrap itself around the room like ribbon around a box nobody wanted to open. "You told people I wasn't built for this world, that I was too soft, that I left, but I didn't disappear." I looked at my father then. Not long, just enough. His jaw flexed, but he said nothing. "I didn't just build a place in this world," I continued. "I built the walls, the foundation, every inch of what you're standing in." Someone near the front whispered, "She owns this place?" I nodded. "Yes, and I built it from the ground up. While you cropped me out of your pictures, I was drawing blueprints. While you sent party invites to everyone else, I was buying the building. Quietly, on purpose." Sophie's expression shifted from pale to pink to something I didn't bother labeling. "I don't need applause," I said. "I'm not here for validation. I'm here because this—" I gestured to the room, the walls, the lighting, the space they took for granted, was never yours to claim. I paused, breath steady. And if silence is the only thing I ever get from you, at least now, it's mine to command. I stepped back from the railing, letting the hush thicken. The music didn't resume. No one filled the silence. That was the point. No one clapped. Not really. There were a few polite coughs, a glass lifted too quickly, a nervous smile stretched too far. Most people just blinked, shifted in their seats, and reached for whatever helped them feel less exposed. Napkin, drink, phone, excuse. The silence after my speech lingered like smoke. It didn't choke, but it stayed in the room, curling around the edges of conversation no one wanted to restart. A line from childhood came back to me, a phrase whispered between bites at formal dinners, after I'd ask a question deemed too emotional, too sensitive to lead. I used to believe that. I wore it like a flaw stitched into my skin. Now it felt like something I'd outgrown. Marcus approached me with a slight nod. "Folders ready?" I asked. He handed me one. Black, minimal, perfectly stacked. My name in small print inside each. A. Rowe, CEO, Elan Holdings. He and two assistants began walking the room, delivering folders guest by guest. No announcement, no explanation, just silence, professionalism, and paper. Inside each was a full contract packet. Booking agreement, tiered service upgrades, line item breakdowns. On top, a single sheet with one line centered in muted ink. Sometimes the story you erased still ends up on the wall. I saw Sophie's hand tremble slightly as she flipped the first page. Her eyes darted to the bottom corner. No initials, no signatures, just my full name. She flipped again, landing on her room assignment, then paused. Her lips parted in surprise. The suite she'd claimed in the group chat, top floor, private terrace, had been reassigned. A handwritten note next to it. Diplomatic override. Priority accommodation. Below that, her new room, standard king, alley view. A cousin, someone I hadn't seen since I was a teenager, turned in her chair. "Why didn't you just use your name from the start?" I looked at her calmly, because I wanted to build something before anyone else named it for me. She nodded slowly, but didn't answer. A few heads turned. Douglas, my father, remained still, his posture perfect, his face unreadable. No scowl, no apology, just stillness. That told me everything. Then I caught movement at the far corner of the ballroom. Aunt Lorraine was holding her folder a little longer than the others. She hadn't opened it yet, just studied the front, fingertips tracing the edge. When she did open it, I noticed something no one else could have seen from across the room. Tucked behind the final page was a slim envelope, handwritten. I knew that penmanship. Heron She slid out a photograph. Even from across the room, I recognized it. I was maybe 8 years old, sitting on the back porch, lemonade pitcher between my knees. My father's hand rested lightly on my shoulder. Lorraine stared at it for a moment, then turned it over. I didn't need to see the back. I remembered what she'd written the first time she gave it to me, long ago. And there it was again, faint but still visible. A small circle drawn around my face, smudged but deliberate. She didn't look up. She didn't smile. She just closed the folder gently and placed it in her lap. Her silence didn't feel like retreat. It felt like knowing. I wasn't clapped off stage. I didn't need to be. This time, I'd written the script. The marble floors made the lobby shine, but they weren't what held this place together. The real weight sat in the back halls, where the tile scuffed easier, and the air always carried the hum of laundry carts and early coffee. I walked past the linen closet that morning, nodding at a few familiar faces prepping trays and resetting carts. Someone had brewed a new pot of dark roast in the break room. A tired "thank you" floated down the hall, answered by a quiet laugh. The coat hooks near the back wall were mostly empty. Most staff kept their things in lockers now, but the rack was still there, a holdover from the days when everything fit on one nail. I reached into my bag, fingers brushing the frame before pulling it free. The name tag had yellowed around the edges. The plastic was cracked diagonally, the clip on the back long gone. Rowe, Housekeeping, 2011. I'd worn it through cold mornings and long shifts, back when I had no reason to think anyone would ever look twice. I hung it above the center hook. No plaque, no label, just a nail in the wall. A young housekeeper paused by the doorway. She glanced at me, then at the tag. Her eyes lingered for a second before she smiled, shy but not unsure. I nodded and she moved on. Back in my office, the sunlight hit just right through the blinds. I set down my bag and found a cream envelope on the desk. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar, neat, controlled. Sophie. Inside, one line. You didn't deserve what we did. I don't know how to undo it. There was no signature, no flourish, just ink on paper and something between guilt and grace. I folded the note and tucked it into the drawer beneath the old swatch books. I didn't feel angry, not anymore. Some things don't need answers. They just need space to stop echoing. Kayla knocked lightly before peeking in. "Hey, boss," she said, holding a clipboard. "Want me to prep the next invite list?" I paused, then nodded. "Let's make it personal this year." She smiled. "Thought you'd say that." Later that week, I drafted the first envelope myself. No calligraphy, no silver trim, just clear print, soft paper, and a name that had earned its place at the top. The return address read A. Rowe, Elin Group, and somewhere in the back hall the old name tag stayed on its hook. Quiet, unassuming, but no longer forgotten. That morning, when I hung my old name tag back on the wall, I didn't do it for anyone to see. I did it to remind myself that real journeys often begin in silence, not on a stage, not in applause, but in the quiet place we choose to stand, even if it's behind the curtain. It took me a long time to understand. Sometimes family doesn't realize they've hurt you, and sometimes an apology doesn't come in words, but in the way they start listening again. In life, if you can forgive without forgetting the pain, you're finding a powerful way to move forward. If this story reminds you of something once forgotten, once sharp but still quietly warm inside, I hope you'll share it. Tell me about something you overcame in silence, because maybe, just maybe, that's what shaped who you are today.